I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 158 of the Future Template Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Solo, PhD, LCSW. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about the intersection of our clinical practice and the always head-spinningly, rapidly evolving world of technology. Yes, I want to talk about the use of AI in our practices. It really feels like, with the pace of everything, we're in the most significant transition period for private practice in I don't know how long. Certainly since COVID, but maybe even more with the advent of AI. Lots is changing. It's changing all the time. We're hearing about AI both in our clinical practices and also for search engines. It is very overwhelming. I think many therapists feel like they're constantly playing catch up, wondering, am I doing this right? Is a robot going to replace me as a therapist or replace the usefulness of my blog posts or whatever? So today I want to pull back the curtain a little bit on how I use AI in my business. I don't think it's gimmicky, but I actually feel like it is helping me in terms of efficiency. So I want to help you think a little bit about mindset with this, and then also think about this idea of AEO beyond just SEO and moving to answer engine optimization. And how do I use AI, frankly, in my marketing and content creation ecosystem to stay visible and not burn out? Because there's so much marketing we do have to do now to stay relevant as high fee intensive practices. And it's impossible to create, content, I think, 100% out of your own head all the time to keep up with the rate that everybody else is doing it. So I know there's a lot of resistance to this. There's significant pushback in our community against AI. And of course, there are the environmental implications. I'm not going to talk about that now, but that is true. And, there's sort of the larger ethical questions of where is this all going? And we're still in this world now where it plays a role. So it is hard. And I will say that I have decided to make judicious choices about how I use AI. And of course, therapists worry that AI is going to replace the therapeutic relationship. It's going to devalue our work. It's going to lead to a HIPAA violation. It's going to harm our clients. And that fear is understandable. Our entire profession is built on human connection, on empathy, on confidentiality. I think when we hear AI, we hear, one, like confidentiality out the window, and two, like it's a robot replacing therapists. And like I said, the landscape is shifting whether we like it or not. Almost 70% of companies in 2025, that's 2025, so it's a little old now, reported using AI as a major component of their marketing strategy, and businesses are increasingly dedicating huge portions of their budgets to AI tools, right? We're already at a disadvantage as small businesses and our resources are limited. So I feel like if we completely opt out of using AI in every way, we are making our businesses less visible. And I wish that were not the case, but I think it's true. And I don't think AI is going to replace you as a therapist, certainly not as an intensive therapist, an EMDR therapist. But I think it can take away a lot of the admin burden. Okay, let me be very clear about something clinical. I do not record my sessions, either audio or video, and I will not. However, I do have a tool that I use that allows me to get AI assistance without session recording. It's called Berries. You may have heard of it. Their website is www.heyberries.com. I'll link it in the show notes. Basically, I can either voice dictate or upload a copy of my handwritten notes, and Berries creates a thorough, clinically relevant, compliant DAP note, SOAP note, whatever you want. And I have total control over what's in the note because I'm dictating it or handwriting it. No recording of any kind. They also do treatment plans, and you can use the same approach. A wide variety of useful tools. They're always expanding them. They have medication trackers, all sorts of stuff. And you don't have to do any video or audio recording. I have a discount code for your first month if you want to try it. It's $50 off your first month with the code Carolyn at checkout. I do get a small amount of money from them for, these discount codes, just to full disclosure, but I also use their tool and I like it. Okay, so that's how I use it clinically, and it's not a lot, and I care a lot about that. But let's look at marketing now, which is where most of my AI usage actually is happening. I use AI to help me draft social media posts, summarize complex research at times, organize my thoughts for a blog post, and that is freeing up more energy for other things that I need. I don't think we're being replaced. I think we're being made more efficient. And yes, there are costs to that. I'm not denying that. I am not here to make a case that AI is 100% ethical, because it is not. I am here to be honest about what I do and how I make it not sound like a bot, and how I actually bring myself into this content. I don't think you're faking your marketing when you do this. You're just clearing out some clutter so you can get the clients in that you need to do the amazing work that you do. I know we've all spent years obsessing over SEO, right? Keywords, backlinks, trying to rank on the first page of Google. That's important. It still is important. But perfect SEO is not the only thing now that gets you to the top. We're moving towards answer engine optimization with tools like, Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity. People aren't just clicking links anymore. They're being conversational. They're asking questions and getting direct answers. So you don't want to just write for keywords. You want to write for authority. You want to have in your content an answer to a question a client might be typing into that search bar. You're not just trying to rank for a term like EMDR therapist in Philadelphia, which is competitive. You're also creating content that answers things like, how do EMDR intensives work for early developmental trauma? Or why does my neurodivergent child trigger me? Like, those are the things people are asking. And if you have content that directly answers that, that's going to pop you way up in those AI searches that we all are seeing. And you're more likely to put you in as the source, and you're going to become the expert in your niche. And when, someone types into the AI search engine, who is the best EMDR intensive therapist in wherever, you're going to pop to the top. This is the gold standard now for visibility. And you might be thinking, wow, this sounds like a lot of extra work. And it is, which is why I bring in AI to help me. You need to be showing up in multiple places, right? To get up on those platforms and those algorithms, those AI algorithms, web copy, blogging, social media, media outlets, podcasts, right? So you have to do that. And there's only so much time we all have. So the way I think about it is I think of it as like how do I bring in my voice, right? But doing it in a way that doesn't fatigue me too much and that I can repurpose. So what I do a lot of the time, if I'm thinking about something that I think would make some good content, I just kind of free associate a voice note, when I'm out for a walk or between sessions. And then sometimes it'll be 5 minutes, sometimes it'll be 30 minutes, but I take the transcript and I turn it into all sorts of things, right? A 30-minute voice note is probably going to be several blog posts, could be several carousels, could be, a few emails to my email list. And I'm also not just taking verbatim what gets spit out after I put in the content from the voice note. I am going through and editing it, adding even more of my voice. And there's a lot of different places that you can use this stuff, right? First, your web copy. It's really hard when you're writing a website, when you're staring at a blank page. If you're, first of all, if you don't have web copy, this voice note stuff could be a great way to do it. But if you already have some web copy and you want to use that to generate other stuff, dump all your existing web copy into whatever your favorite AI search thingy bot is. I don't even know the terminology. I'm not that I'm not that sophisticated at this. I'm just telling you what I do. I use Claude and I use Gemini primarily. And that's going to help it get to know your voice. And then, ask it to write some stuff that you need, right? Whether it's blog posts or, subtopics like what is an EMDR intensive? Why is an EMDR intensive an ideal treatment for a niche population? Frequently asked questions. All this kind of stuff is going to help AI algorithms understand exactly what your page is about. So you can take your content that you already have and like ask it to be kind of optimized by using maybe SEO optimized stuff that isn't already. Social media, right? With all that stuff that you've already generated by popping in your web copy, you can generate some social media posts as well. I love Kelly McKenna's Reels membership. I'll link to that in the show notes. That is a way that I get all of my Reels ideas, not all of them, a lot of them. What I do is I'll take the prompt that she has in her email. She sends out 4 prompts a week in her emails for different types of Reels that are pretty open-ended. You can apply them to any kind of niche, but I'll just take the prompt, dump it into ChatGPT. I don't use ChatGPT, Gemini. Add some more details about like my niche, like what I'm looking for, maybe a couple other reference points, come up with an idea for a reel based on this prompt that's on the topic of how an EMDR intensive can be an excellent model for parents of neurodivergent kids. I also say, include that I'm a mom of a neurodivergent kid for that context. Say like, can you write a caption for me? All sorts of stuff, right? And then you can edit those ideas. Like I might get a few ideas spit back at me. I like one, I don't like the other. Take the one I like, add a couple suggestions, refine it. And then when I'm recording or making a carousel, I continue to like edit things. So it still sounds like me. And anytime obviously you can do this for blog posts too. Again, the voice note idea, remember, you can create many different types of content from like a 30-minute voice note. Or 30 minutes sounds like a long time. You could do a few 5-minute ones. You're going to be able to say, can you create from this transcript, Claude, 4 different pieces of content? A social media reel, a carousel, a 10-slide carousel, a blog post, and a email newsletter, right? For me, I use it a lot for podcasting. I take a lot of content that I have previously created, so transcripts of interviews I've done or video lessons I've created, things that are my voice, and I dump them into Gemini and say, I'm looking for 3 new podcast episode ideas based on some of these topics. I might even have, if I have a previous podcast episode, I might say I'm looking for something that's related to this, but has a different slant, bringing in some of this stuff. Coaching calls that I've recorded, all of that is like gold. Dump it all in and I get a lot of podcast ideas. And of course, from every podcast, I'm also repurposing that into a blog post, into an email newsletter, into some social media content. And it's not a one and done, right? Like there's multiple ideas for multiple different topics that can come out of, 3 different podcast episode transcripts. So there's a lot of ways to mine 1 or 2 longer form pieces like an interview for multiple content uses. I also think using AI is great for media outreach. I draft pitch emails to podcasts or other media outlets with AI. I do have a specific template that I use now for podcast outreach. So I find the podcast description for the podcast I'm pitching. I put that in there. I talk about some possible topics. I ask it to draft a pitch. I also talk about a couple of episodes that I've listened to from that podcast that I feel like make it clear that I would be a good guest. And I make the pitch as specific as possible. This has worked for me on multiple podcasts, to get on multiple podcasts. So all those are ideas. And then once you're on a podcast, you have even more content that you can dump into your thing. It's also great for course creation. You have all this content that you're already using. Ask whatever chatbot you're using to give you some ideas for a mini course or a webinar and see what comes out of it. There's so much more stuff than this, but this is just a little taster. So you can fill your practice. Oh, wait, one more thing I want to say. Sorry. In the age of AI, right? Personal connection and authenticity matters more than ever, which is why I'm talking about things like the voice note, things like teaching these chatbots your voice so it sounds authentic when people hear this stuff. But I'm also talking about your practice itself. I believe that by offering an intensive model, we are doing something that cannot be replicated by someone just Googling coping skills for anxiety, right? If that's the kind of therapist you are, you might be a little nervous. We are not doing that. That is not the work we're doing. Multi-day EMDR intensives, that is light years away from, maybe not light years, but I really hope we're nowhere near having a robot replicate that. But still, we have a strong advantage because of the type of work we do. I also think an in-person office is another huge advantage in this time. I'm not saying you have to have one. For many people, that isn't an option, but especially for us intensive therapists, offering that person-to-person connection where you're sharing a room with someone, that matters so much more than it ever did, I think. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. Okay, now a little word about consistency and marketing and all this stuff. Okay, you can fill your practice with an excellent website and strong referral relationships, and you should still be doing those things, but it's not going to be set it and forget it anymore, right? AI is going to amplify that work, not replace it. What you need to do is be showing up in a lot of places, especially if you want to have more streams of income in the future. It feels like a lot, and it is. But when you have this system, like I was talking about, where you're teaching your voice and having that be what content comes from, you're not taking yourself out of it. You are creating a sustainable way with the help of AI to make this possible for you as a solo practitioner. We have a lot of stuff we have to do. And yes, marketing is really important if you want to be that high ticket therapist. So we do have to stay visible, but you kind of got to work smarter, not harder. And AI takes, a big chunk out of that. You can't spend all day working on this stuff, right? You need to be strategic. You need to leverage the tools that exist, and they'll help you get over that like blank page syndrome and the analysis paralysis. You're still the expert. AI is a messenger that's helping you along the way. I am actually crafting a freebie. Hopefully by the time this episode comes out, I'll have it, where I talk in a little bit more depth about some of these things that I'm mentioning here. And, of course, I'm here to support you with this if you want to ask me questions about how I'm doing this or have me look at stuff, all of that I'm happy to do. There's a variety of ways you can work with me. So I hope that was a little bit of insight to get you to start thinking about AI not being the total enemy of all that is good, but as something that exists and is here to stay, and figuring out how we can use it in a way that's in alignment with our values and also helps us, stay the course, because the marketing is very draining. It really is. And we have to find ways to lessen the burden on us. So hope that was helpful. Have a great week, everyone. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.